Neurotypical. Not displaying or characterised by neurologically atypical patterns of thought or behaviour. Neurotypical people frequently believe that their way is the only way and the best way of doing things. So in other words, Donald Trump, Theresa May, Boris Johnson are all neurotypicals. Who knew? And just for clarification here, the term cis means you identify with the agenda, you are assigned with at birth. The term AFAB assigned female at birth, and AMAB assigned male at birth. So yes, just a couple of gender definitions. Not that I think we need them here, but just in case. And yeah. This is our first monologue, and it's Ash Lloydon. I was 43 when I found out. All three of my podlings are on our spectrum, as the cool kids call it, and it was suggested that I maybe might be too. I've no idea who said it, as I was too busy lining up my DVD collection in semi-autobiographical order, and with a ruler at the time. Now I shout it from the rooftops on a daily, hourly basis. It's made things make a lot more sense, plus it's good to know where my incredible superpowers come from. With hindsight, it's obvious that I've masked from an early age. Usually when you explain this to neurotypical folk, they inadvertently say, oh yes, well we all do that to a certain extent. Well, let me just explain that autistic masking is also slightly different. With autistic folk, much of the masking is there in order to try and fit into situations that are really alien to us. We're essentially copying what we've seen others do in order to better fit in, but without actually understanding why folk do these things in the first place. If folk want to know what that feels like, then I tell them to just pop away and try watching the 1984 classic The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, Cold, and then write a thesis on it that compares it to the original version. You know, the one they haven't seen or heard of. As mentioned, I mask a lot, and yup, it requires a lot of energy and concentration that can leave me feeling exhausted, frustrated, and angry to the point of meltdown. In some cases, it can exacerbate things and make me anxious and just generally leave me feeling like shit. And all this just to fit in. As I mentioned, although I did not receive a diagnosis until very late in life, I make myself sound like a fossil. I soon discovered that I've masked since childhood, and I've built up an Ash persona along the way, but one that bizarrely draws attention to itself rather than blend in. It's almost like there are multiple me's vying for attention. One that wants to quietly blend in, and the other wants to shout "Arse!" at passers-by from the rooftops, whilst excitedly ranting about things that have no relevance. Yep, I've bizarrely used masking to blend in whilst also using it to stand out. Confused? Well, imagine how I feel. But after 43 years, the mask and me are so intrinsically linked to the point where taking it off is not only a terrifying thought, but almost impossible to do. It's as much a part of who I am as my crap haircut and love of bad Euro horror. Yet in one of those wonderful autistic contradictions, you know, like how autistic people need quiet spaces yet are really loud, when I'm at home with Mrs. Ash, it drops away completely and I can just be me. I'm told I do really great eye contact, but here's the thing, I actually concentrate on the end of folks' noses. I also wear sleeves that are slightly too long so that I can pull on them and keep my arms rigid so I don't flap excitedly when talking. I also always carry a bag to give me something to fiddle with, otherwise I'd flap my hands around a lot. When someone is talking to me, I tilt my head slightly to the right and nod slowly. This makes it look like I'm taking it all in. If it's sad news, I tilt to the left and nod slower. Yet the wonderful thing is, when I'm out with my other half, she will subtly give me social cues as to when to listen, when to stop talking, and when to respond to things. So in a bizarre quirk of fate, she actually masks for me. And that's why I'm confident enough to try things that otherwise I'd hide from. Frankly, it's just there. Always. And much as I'd love to see it manifests itself as a giant blue demon that helps me to fight crime, mostly it's with me just flapping about, not paying attention, and whenever I get excited, ranty, or just open my mouth, which surprisingly is quite often. I compromise myself socially by attempting to not tell people what I think. Warning. If you are tempted to try this though, it sometimes doesn't work.
This is Rebecca. I was 18 when I found out I was autistic. I was diagnosed in a psychiatric ward that I'd been admitted to due to depression. I believe if I'd been diagnosed earlier and actually had some support, I could have avoided a lot of the mental health issues that I then developed. You know, I felt really lonely and often quite shameful when I didn't know. I had all these behaviours that were seen as weird, and I struggled with things that other people seemed to find so easy, and I'd beat myself up a lot about not being able to do things like everyone else. The shame also came from being bullied a lot for my differences. I thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't leave the house for 2 years between the ages of 14 and 16 for fear of being seen as different or no explanation for it. I developed suicidal depression and really, really low self-esteem. You know, there were plenty of chances along the way for a diagnosis. I was largely non-verbal in primary school, and I was referred to a speech and language therapist, but they didn't look into any conditions. They just told my mum I was really, really shy. I believe that's because, you know, I identify as female, and it was and is still largely seen as a male condition. And then in high school, I was really badly bullied for how quiet I was, and I started refusing to go. But the school, again, they didn't look into any conditions. They were just more concerned with my attendance than anything else. But I do feel mostly content with the fact that I'm autistic, you know. What I'd like people to know is that we don't need to be pushed into socialising all the time. You know, it might be beneficial to neurotypicals, but that isn't really the same for us. You know, I enjoy my own company, which I believe is a positive of being autistic, because I don't think I get bored as quickly as neurotypicals do. You know, the only downside really is the bullying for our autistic traits. As mine was when I was undiagnosed. I'd like people to know that just because somebody's not got a label attached yet, it is wrong to persecute someone for their differences, diagnosed or not. I think we need to be taught about neurodiversity from a young age, because I don't think it's healthy to do neurotypical, because it just leads to autistic burnout. I mean, I can do it as in appear, you know, socially normal, but I wouldn't say I emotionally cope with it. But I try to be pretty open about the fact that I have autism, but I still feel like I have to do things that make me uncomfortable, like eye contact and not stimming, just to make the neurotypicals around me feel more comfortable. I feel like I have to do this the most at work because, well, I work with the general public, and I still believe that people like you more if they think you're like them, you know. But I don't think this is a good thing, because it is exhausting and damaging to the neurodiverse person. I only do it out of pure fear because of my past experiences with bullying. But then when I think about it, I don't think most people would mind if I told them I was autistic. But then I don't want people to think that I mention it all the time for attention, so I feel like my true nature manifests itself when I'm allowed to stim in social situations. If it's out in public, then sometimes people stare. Sometimes they don't even notice, though. When I melt down, they do notice, though. Then they usually stare, or they laugh because, you know, I'm an adult that's crying, and that's classic comedy. And that happens more times than I'd care to admit, really. I feel like I compromise a lot in terms of my own personal comfort.
And this is Mark. I found out forth shortly after my 41st birthday. I had to chase the diagnosis myself. The GP practice had never dealt with an adult diagnosis before. They didn't know where to send me. I had to source that for them. I don't know what typical is like, so it is difficult to give a comparison. I know I prefer a lot more peace and quiet than my colleagues. I can feel quite lonely despite being surrounded by folk. I often feel I have no connections with them. Throughout my life, I have had difficulty making friends. Many acquaintances and folk I know, but not really friends as such. Then again, what is a friend? Due to the nature of my job, I tend not to reveal my Asperger's, as there is still a great misunderstanding about it, and I think it would affect how my patients see me. I never pretend not to be autistic, and I'm just myself, although I do have to adopt some strategies with my communication. I have to consciously be aware if I'm talking too much or not allowing others to talk. I'm not sure if I can totally act as if I am neurotypical. I think those who do not know my diagnosis just think I'm a bit focused and intense at times. A brisk and forceful are other phrases associated with me. I have a lack of close friends, and other than my wife. No real social life, no clubs or societies, no friendly invites out for a drink. I compromise myself hugely around neurotypicals. I have to tolerate very chatty work colleagues whom I just want to scream, "Shut up" at. The difficulty of not saying, "How can you not understand? It's simple," when I can see a simple solution, but they just want to put in what seem like hundreds of what-ifs into the problem. When I did not know about my Asperger's, I just felt I was pursuing my own path, that I was a bit individual. What really hit home was when exploring the possibility of Asperger's, reading a paragraph in the Tony Atwood book that had summed up my entire childhood. I thought I was unique, that I was me, and suddenly I was a stereotype. I feel no pressure being autistic. It is part of me. I accept it. The issue is more the reverse, getting folk to accept that I actually have a diagnosis. Well, how can you have Asperger's? You have a degree and a job. Before I knew the relevance of stress in my life, various behaviours would manifest that would impact on family life. My diagnosis has led to the whole family being involved, and everybody having the knowledge of how to work together better.
This is Cookie Monster, who is an autistic mum. I'm currently under assessment. I notice similarities between myself and my son, who is also under assessment. My other two sons also have sensory issues and dyspraxia, but none of us have had a formal diagnosis as yet. Because I have no official diagnosis as far as everyone else is concerned, I'm not autistic. I feel like if I say anything, I'll be treated as broken, and I don't think that I am. I have to work to pay the bills and keep my home, so I have to communicate. I'd rather be forced to interact with people than have no control over my life. I've relaxed more since I became aware. I don't think I'm fundamentally flawed or damaged anymore. I'm happy being who I am now. And I realise that my abilities are missed not because of how I am constructed, but because of how society is constructed. To me, it's neurotypical people who do things in the wrong ways. I do not judge people on their appearances or their communication styles. I value people who have traits that are worth something, be that intelligence or kindness, talent and affection. I find the system where people are successful not based on talent or ability, but on who they know, to be infuriating. The social hierarchy to me is outdated, and we've evolved beyond that. Why do people feel better than others because they hoard more money or power? I don't feel better than others and think it's a ridiculous basis to build confidence and self-esteem. My abilities are not reflected in my interactions very well, but I can show my abilities. And there should be more emphasis put on this. I'm very quiet in social situations. I watch and I agree a lot. I nod and smile. I sometimes go mute when I'm anxious. And this is a vicious circle, and the more I think that they think I am weird, the more weird I behave. Then it confirms their beliefs. I go rigid, I shallow breathe, I say stupid things, I stutter and I tremble. I can't find the next word. When I find the first sentence, I lose the second. I seem confident, but then I disappear into a black hole when I'm taken out of my own head by having to communicate. When I didn't know, it was hard. I was anxious, I was depressed a lot. I drank too much, I felt flawed. And sometimes I hated myself. In a world where sociability is the lubricant for life, I was stuck. If you really want something, use your mask. Just be aware that it is a mask that you can put away afterwards, because covering yourself can be suffocating. Take time for yourself, say no. And remember that neurotypicals aren't very good at communicating either sometimes. We just struggle because we didn't get the handbook that they did.
This is Anonymous Mail. About 1.5 years ago, I was formally diagnosed. Up until that point, I had no idea I was autistic and didn't even know much about autism. I was even admittedly a little bit offensive and prejudiced against disabled people in general. Then at 11:22 a.m. on Friday the 13th of January, I was pushed into the category of disabled, told I was autistic, and sent on my merry way to deal with it. I think it was the first time in my life I've experienced genuine shock. At this point, I'm still struggling. Being raised in a neurotypical norm, I've still got all the negative value judgments, all the stereotypes, and all the inadequate language instilled within me. So I'm having to come to better terms with that. Likewise, where I live, there is zero help or support available for all late diagnosed adults with Asperger's. Well, I've been sent to numerous counsellors and therapists, but all of these professionals start out with, well, I don't know anything about autism, so let's assume that you're the expert and just see what we can do. For me, the diagnosis, which came relatively out of the blue, was, for want of a better word, devastating. And my experience at dealing with neurotypical since has been overwhelmingly negative. For me, the best analogy is that I am a cat, living in a world of dogs, being sent to doggy therapists and doggy counsellors who teach me doggy techniques and doggy strategies to try and train me to be more like a dog. All the while failing to understand that until the day I die, I will always remain a cat. So what I need, and what is painfully lacking, is a cat mentor who has already learned to successfully live, indeed thrive, in the dog's world. I'm very selective about who I tell. For example, I've had numerous sexual partners over the past 1.5 years, yet I've only ever told one of my autism. They retorted, in all seriousness, without a hint of humour, "Oh yeah, I forgot you were a weirdo." Now I won't tell employers, yet hold back from discussing with colleagues. I don't even discuss it with friends, as they don't have the understanding or the language to properly engage. So I tend to find I hide more and more by masking, which is exhausting. Frankly, neurotypicals are just more comfortable around me when they don't have to think of my autism. I encounter difficulties every day, countless times throughout each day across a whole range of interactions, such as work, friends, and lodgers. I mask my true nature and try to mimic the behaviour of neurotypicals. Plus, I've found that ingratiating myself to the ego of neurotypicals is a massively helpful strategy, as they are much more susceptible and malleable after ego stroking. Often I just think what neurotypicals would like me to be like and try my best to adhere to that model. It's proven very successful, as most people, when they find out I'm autistic, say, "Oh, I would never have guessed you were autistic." I think I'm supposed to thank them for that comment. I can hold conversations, engage in social interactions. I can process emotion well enough rather than via true empathy. I can read body language, can understand and engage with humour, and I can play certain roles so well no one knows that I am masking or acting. The larger the group of people that I have to deal with, the more demands it places on my ability to process the sensory information. Thus I become exhausted, more reclusive, and it pushes me further towards shutdown. I suffer shutdown more habitually than meltdown. Neurotypicals don't tend to notice very much at all, other than I may become very quiet, not understanding how much of a sensory onslaught it can be for me. It happens several times throughout each day, but it greatly intensifies if I am in a new situation or I have to deal with new or greater numbers of people.
This is Thomas. I was diagnosed when I was 5 and told about it when I was 7 and had a better understanding of what it was. It's just a different way of seeing the world. We add things up in a different order, and where we may not pick up on things that normal people do, we notice details and tiny things that no one will put a thought to. It's also important to add that very rarely are two autistic people the same. Each person experiences autism in their own unique way, so you can't judge autism off of only one person. I think it's important not to hide that you're autistic. Friends and family can be fantastic help with any of your needs, but only if you're completely honest with them. If, like me, you struggle with loud noises and crowds, then tell them. They won't then take you to a firework display on purpose, will they? They're there for you and will do anything to make you comfortable because they love you. It often makes it hard to judge the joke boundaries. On one hand, you can not know when someone is joking and take the joke as serious speech. Or you can joke too much and keep joking even after the subject of conversation has moved on. I definitely put on a more positive outside when I'm around people and wait until I'm in private to deal with the social fatigue and things.
cameras in the house. Make sure that you don't get caught unawares by something just before you're about to go and speak. And that was just a little bit emotional, some of that. I'm sure some of you might have felt that too. This is a monologue by an anonymous trans woman. I was diagnosed at the age of 13, but I didn't self-identify as autistic until I was 21. I didn't self-identify until that age because, in actual fact, I wasn't looking for a diagnosis, but the SENCO, that's the Special Educational Needs Coordinator, at my school said they thought that I was autistic, and I was diagnosed basically over my head, and it knocked the confidence out of me. Being a teenager, you know, trying to make friends. I had an entirely negative view of what autism was at that time because I only knew about it through having this medical label, which was a syndrome and a deficit. I moved into a care home when I was 21 and I made friends with an Aspie called Tom, and he said to me, you know, if the world was majority autistic, neurotypicality would be seen as a disorder. And that was the first time I'd come across that concept, and that's what allowed me to accept myself as autistic. I don't compromise myself for neurotypicals, but I do feel I compromise for cis people a lot more. School was not a good experience for me. I was bullied every day, including with physical and verbal violence by the kids and the teachers. I got over the kids bullying me a long time ago, but the teachers were in a position of power over me. So I'm still traumatised by that, to the point where I'm on antipsychotic medication because of that. I'd like people to know, regarding my autism, what happened to me in the trans community when I moved to Brighton. So I moved to Brighton just a few years ago because I needed a safe place to transition. When I made the decision to move to Brighton, I was so scared of moving because I was moving to a strange city where I didn't know anyone, and I was going to be setting up a life for myself. I was really scared. So one of the first things that I did was I made contact with a trans group. I could go there, and I went there for every week for a year and a half before I moved to try and build up a network of friends so that I had a support network when I moved down. And I've never felt such a sense of belonging as I did in that group. When I moved here, I had sessions with a person who, they were employed by the group as an in-house counsellor. And then one day I missed an appointment with her, and it was because I'd been away at the weekend and the trains weren't running properly, and the next time she saw me, she hauled me into the office and interrogated me about why I'd missed the appointment. And basically she accused me of lying and used intimidating body language and intimidating tones throughout, and really made me terrified. And that was actually my first week on hormones, and there was an error in my medication because I'd been misinformed that I had to come off my antipsychotic medication in order to go on hormones. So I was really emotionally unstable that week. And then this person who was supposed to be a counsellor scared the life out of me, and so I had a meltdown where I kicked over the table and I threw a chair against the wall. The trans group held 2 committee meetings in my absence in which I wasn't allowed to attend or have any representation. So they never found out my side of the story, and bearing in mind they didn't know what the council had done to me because it happened in her office. No one else saw it. And they took the decision to give me an indefinite ban from the group. And that was 6 years ago, and I'm still banned. And still isolated from the trans community. I've never had adequate support to go through my gender transition, to find the community that I moved to Brighton in order to find. I spent the first year of my time in Brighton vegetating in my bedsit, suffering from post-traumatic stress, being too scared to go out and talk to anyone in case the same thing happened again. I didn't understand why it had happened, so I thought anyone I might interact with might do the same to me. The error in my antipsychotic meds was sorted out literally the afternoon I had the meltdown. So I would have been safe to go back into the group that afternoon, but I'm still banned 6 years later. I've always found it hard to make friends in the autistic community because lots of them are men, and when they're women, they're usually cis women. I managed to make one friend. We don't get to see each other very often, but when we do, we're really close.
And now for a poetic interlude. Normal works from 9 to 5. Normal wants to learn to drive. Normal never thinks aloud. Normal blends into the crowd. Normal laughs at normal jokes. Normal hangs out with the blokes. Normal's reading normal books. Normal sticks to normal looks. Normal isn't weird or strange. Normal sees no need for change. Normal's aspirational, non-denominational. Norman's normal, that's okay. Ava's average, come what may. But Zeke's a freak and Toddy's odd and Jane's a punishment from God. Normal's limbs will work just fine. Normal sits with neutral spine. Normal straight in every sense. Normal's sitting on the fence. Normal's happy with its gender. Normal man is none too tender. Normal woman not too tough. But normal isn't good enough. So normal craves success and fame. Normal isn't quite the same for women as it is for men. Normal goes to bed at 10. Normal's hers, normal's his. Normal's what it says it is. Normal thinks how normal should. Normal thinks that normal's good. Normal keeps you in and cool. Keeps you safe from ridicule, because normal folk are never cruel to fellow normals, as a rule. Normal's neither thin nor fat. Who the fuck decided that? Is this definition formal? Who determines what is normal? Normal tricked and normal lied. I couldn't be normal if I tried. And this one is called Causes. Caused by what fours and closed doors, something's up on the upper floors, down on all fours, looking for an explanation, must be caused by vaccination. Not so innocent inoculation, caused by flaws or some mutation, looking for an injury claim, looking for an insanity clause, looking for something or someone to blame. Caused by excess testosterone, progesterone or factors unknown, caused by genes or secret schemes, fertilisers, pesticides, the answer hides in the old grey matter, must be mad, mad as a hatter. Holding a mystery in my lobes, the charity detectives insist they can solve this puzzle, enigma, embarrassment, stigma. Who is going to make the breakthrough? Who is going to remake you? We can surely locate a cure if only you'll donate some more. Relentless pursuit of a pill to prevent us, until then resent us. It's endemic, systemic, seems to be an epidemic. This week's good cause for rattling tins, atonement for our previous sins, caused by karma, caused by some prenatal drama. Cursed and never blessed us, these things are sent to test us. causes anxiety, discomfort, shame, causes anxious society to rethink again, causes people to look away, don't know what to do or say. No one will want to be this way. Put in a category marked tragedy, unsatisfactory. Do you need a label, or are we just unstable? Marked from behind masks with strains and stains. Nobody ever asks what causes normal brains.
This is a poem from myself. It describes my autistic nature and how I relate to my autism. And it goes like this. I've got snakes inside my ears and bursting blisters on my brain. I'm zoning in and zoning out. My thoughts all spinning everywhere. Through a glass wall I try to hear you, but it's hard to understand the people speaking to me, talking to me, total overload. I'm zoning in and zoning out. My thoughts all spinning everywhere. All conversation is frustration and I'm struggling to connect with people speaking to me, talking to me, total overload with random thoughts, creative impulses exploding in my skull. All conversation is frustration and I'm struggling to connect. I have to focus, pay attention to the voices all around. With random thoughts, creative impulses exploding in my skull, and hissing snakes with angry bites injecting venom in my ears, I have to focus, pay attention to the voices all around. The people play a social game in which it's tricky to keep up with hissing snakes with angry bites injecting venom in my ears, eroding all my confidence, distracting me with rage and doubt. The people play a social game in which it's tricky to keep up. I can't suppress these inner demons because I hear them all the time, eroding all my confidence, distracting me with rage and doubt. The stinging lectures of my aunts that reeked of words that stank of truth. I can't suppress these inner demons because I hear them all the time, the taunting bullies in the playground, shouty teachers in the class, the stinging lectures of my aunt that reeked of words that stank of truth, the friends I've hurt, the loves I've spurned, all pull me deep inside myself, the taunting bullies in the playground, shouty teachers in the class, the scattered fragments of the past that are embedded in my mind, the friends I've hurt, the loves I've spurned, all pull me deep inside myself, where soon they merge into a matrix of creation and ideas. The scattered fragments of the past that are embedded in my mind, these vivid images so sharp, they pricked my conscience still, my thoughts were soon they merge into a matrix of creation and ideas. I can't contain them, stretching, screaming as they struggle to escape. These vivid images so sharp, they prick my conscience still, my thoughts, the superheroes, evil villains, pretty damsels, wise old men. I can't contain them, stretching, screaming as they struggle to escape. Rampaging armies, squabbling politicians, suffering innocents, the superheroes, evil villains, pretty damsels, wise old men. I make up stories in my dreams. My fantasies are brought to life. Rampaging armies, squabbling politicians, suffering innocents burst out of me and take the shape and form of words. And with these words I make up stories in my dreams. My fantasies are brought to life in plays and poetry. Pantoums, haikus, sestinas, sonnets, songs burst out of me and take the shape and form of words. And with these words I speak the truth. I am alive. I live for this. Performing words in plays and poetry. Pantoums, haikus, sestinas, sonnets, songs. I am complete, yet so alone. Imagination rules my world. I speak the truth. I am alive. I live for this. Performing words because I'm itching to create. Cut loose and let the demons out. I am complete, yet so alone. Imagination rules my world. Through a glass wall I try to hear you, but it's hard to understand because I'm itching to create. Cut loose and let the demons out. See, I've got snakes inside my ears and bursting blisters on my brain.
So this is another poem that I wrote, and it's about what it's like being on the spectrum and dating a neurotypical. I wrote it when I was 18, so I didn't know I was on the spectrum at the time. I just thought it was about some prick. It's called You Gave Me Panic Attacks and I Called It Love. You make my heart uncomfortably accelerate. My fingers and toes grow cold and clammy, like our first date but without the joy. I've not given my body consent to do this, but that doesn't matter. You still think I'm doing this on purpose. My mouth is dry, my hands are shaky, You're demanding a conversation, but words are speeding round my brain so quickly that they're tripping over each other just to get out of my mouth, trampling each other with no regard for rhyme or reason. I'm sweating. My limbs feel like lead. Suddenly being exactly 169 centimetres from the ground is just too high up. I need to sit down. Oh, I don't care where I am, I'll sit on the floor. You're embarrassed? I'm not blind to that. You reach out, I flinch. I'm not blind to the pain that just flashed across your face either. I know I strictly stated that I wasn't ready to talk about what happened, but that look tells me that this is my fault. I'm sat on a pavement, my coat trailing in a puddle, my makeup streaming its way down my face without a clue where I am, somewhere near Knockabasses, and it's all my fault. You can't stand the sight of me right now. And trust me, the feeling is mutual, but right now, I need your help to find my way home. And you do, but I don't know if it's out of love, pity, guilt, or basic human decency. But what I do know is that this will happen again and again, and it will be my fault again and again.
This is a PhD female medical student. I was 24 and a computer science PhD student when I discovered I was on the spectrum. I started having panic attacks the summer before my 24th birthday, and over the following couple of months descended into severe depression. I eventually went to my GP, who after months of getting nowhere, persuaded me to see a counsellor, who noted that I wouldn't look her in the eye and said, "What do you know about Asperger's syndrome?" She followed this up with, "But I don't know, I mean, you obviously have a sense of humour and you're not meant to if you're on the spectrum." I was offended because all I'd been told about ASD was that autistic people don't realise that other people have feelings. This, and the humour thing, made me sure that I could not be autistic. Au contraire. I went home and did some Google searching, and I discovered that actually those things are myths, and it was obvious I have Asperger's right from the start. I mentioned this to my GP at my next appointment, and she immediately referred me for diagnosis. I was officially diagnosed about 9 months later at the age of 25. I want the world to know that autistic people, A, have feelings, B, can empathise, C, care about other people. I also wish that autism were not understood as primarily a social and or communication disorder with sensory processing weirdnesses, as a side note, but rather a sensory processing difference that has social/communication side effects. I have to hide it, and I have done since I was diagnosed almost 2 years ago. I'm a medical student, and due to the autistic people can't feel empathy and autistic people don't like people myths, it would hurt my career if people made those assumptions about me. My immediate family and one of my best friends knows. The other one said, "Oh, but you're not medically weird, you're just normally weird," when I tried to tell her, so I didn't mention it again, and I don't even know whether she registered it. But that's it. I pretend I'm neurotypical with difficulty. It takes a lot of energy. For years, it also used energy turned against myself as I tried to experience the world the way I was told I should. Tried to find the sensory and emotional and physiological responses in myself that I was told I was having, when they are not there, and deny the ones that actually are. Now at least I can understand and focus all my energy on passing when I'm in public. I don't have to pretend when I'm at home alone. I tell people I have a migraine instead of saying that I'm having an autistic shutdown. I pretend that things don't hurt my senses when they do. I fake enthusiasm for things I don't care about or that scare the hell out of me, because that's the normal response. I claim reactions to things that I don't experience. I nod along and pretend to understand when actually I have no idea what's going on.
And this is Stevie. I can't remember exactly how old I was when I was diagnosed. I was either 36 or 37. It's layers of difference. Autism is different, very different, and then the layers of trends on top of that. You get more and more layers of difference, and society just looks at you and goes, well, you're not normal, and you're not just one type of not normal, you're all these types of not normal, so let's make you feel like shit. In junior school, my reports always said, doesn't suffer fools gladly, but never finishes a task. I remember studying Friends and watching them and being like, okay, I've got to play with someone's hair. Why am I playing with hair? Why am I tucking my skirt into my knickers and jumping off a bench? What's this? I tried to be hyper girly. Short skirts, high heels, try and fit in. Try and date boys, and boys would say, well, you're not like other girls. No, shit, Sherlock. And I'd always be thinking, oh, fucking hell, this is so boring. I'd rather be at home reading a book. I massively compromise myself in neurotypicals and from the trans perspective. I compromise for cis people and straight people, and I just feel like my whole life has been about compromising and hiding who I am all the time, constantly. So when I get home from work, I'm just drained from being a teacher and being in front of young people. I have to try and be, or appear to be, neurotypical. I'm lucky that at school and that I can be out as non-binary. I'm out as autistic with everyone, but I have to mask all the time. I'm a drag artist, and a lot of it is networking because, well, that's the way the scene works. After the performance, you come off stage and you talk to people in the audience that you don't know, the kinds of people who book acts. I can't do that. I can't come off stage and talk to people I don't know. I've had to rely on people to facilitate that for me. All the autistic kids and all the queer kids, they're always in my drama studio. They're always telling me the problems, and I know they're autistic before they do. It's very difficult to teach successfully, allowing myself to be my full self, flapping, doing whatever stims I might want to do, so they tend to gravitate towards me. I've been taken advantage of a lot and abused because of my autism, because it makes me vulnerable. I trust people and I take them at face value, and I don't understand the subtleties of abusive behaviours or things like that, or I don't notice them. But I wouldn't change that, because going through those abusive situations made me who I am today. I love who I am. And I don't want to be anyone else. I sometimes think about who I would be without my autism. Or would I want to be that person? And yes, I would have had maybe less pain, or would it have been different pain? And I think being autistic, you draw the best people towards you and you alienate the people you shouldn't really be around anyway. I personally got to the stage where I can spot an abuser now. Now I just know that the good people who are around me see my autism, love me, and want to be around me. And they're good people, because the average people don't stick around because they can't deal with the bluntness and the honesty and the quirkiness. The schools have allowed me to use my first name because the teachers get called, oh, sir or miss, and I'm neither of those things. So when I went for my interview, they really wanted me to come to that school, and I said, if you really want me here, you'll have to allow me to use my first name. And the head teacher was very supportive of that. A person can be trans and not have to be medically transitioned or change their outward appearance in any way, still be trans. That's them, and they need to be accepted for it. Now in that sense, I feel different to maybe what society's understanding of what trans is. But also in the LGBT community, there is a kind of, you're not trans enough, you don't look trans kind of thing. AFAB queers that I meet, a very high percentage are probably undiagnosed autistic people. A cross-section of my students that I've had over the years, any AFABs that come to me and say, I don't think I'm straight, they're also autistic. I think there's some kind of correlation between queerness and autism.
So we've heard a lot this evening in the show about masking, so this is a poem about that. The first half is about the masking that we have to do in societies at the moment, and the second half is an imagining a society in which we may not have to. This is called Manifesto from Behind the Mask. Make me a mask so that no one can see that the face that I'm wearing is not really me. Get me a glaze to go over my eyes so it looks like I'm looking while I'm melting inside. Fetch me some specs that can read between lines. Fit me antennae that pick up the signs. Lend me a lens that reads unwritten rules. Bless me with patience to help suffer fools. Find me a babel fish trained to translate the looks and the hints and the traps and the bait. Arm me with ammo so I'm never caught in the crossfire of banter without a retort. Fit me a filter to sift out distraction. Teach me a trick to predict a reaction. Create me a coat like the back of a duck so that nothing will stick when they throw enough muck. Install me a switch that can switch off my thinking, considering, probing, deciphering, linking, at least fit a dimmer or a slow-mo or pause that can turn down the volume or close all the doors. Give me that gift that they call inhibition, so I know when to hush and reserve my position. Program an app that decodes all the crap. Build me a bridge across the processing gap. Alternatively, make me a world where not every place is buzzing with noise and invading my space. Set up society so you can converse and I can obsess and neither is worse. Where statements are clear and where reasoning's sound. Where some holes are square because not all pegs are round. Where life on a spectrum is not to be feared, diversity is normal and no one is weird. Ditch the requirement that all must conform. Broaden our meaning of what is the norm. Change the arrangements, compete rather less, cooperate more, reimagine success, where a living's a right, not a gift or a perk, where we're working to live, we're not living to work, where skills are acknowledged and talents are freed from each by ability to each by need. Design a fresh start where there's room to relax, to think, to create and to heal up the cracks. Agree some new rules so we all can control our workplaces, life spaces, world as a whole. A future where fear, hate and bullying stop. A system where people, not profit, come top. Surely this isn't too much that I ask, but until we achieve it, please make me that mask. And finally, to close the show, and especially for tonight, and in honour of its 50th anniversary, this poem is called Stonewall Was a Riot. It wasn't the Stonewall focus group or the Stonewall business case. It wasn't the Stonewall let's present our most acceptable face. Long years of asking nicely had not got us anywhere. Our rulers didn't hear us when we whispered, it's not fair. So when rewriters try to say we won by being quiet, remind them of our history, that Stonewall was a riot. It wasn't the Christopher Street Parade or carnival with floats, No candidates turned up and smiled to win themselves some votes. It wasn't the Stonewall letter or the Stonewall resolution. It fought all night to light the dawn of the gay rights revolution. When glossies feed you tales that serve a bland and spiceless diet, remind them of our history, that Stonewall was a riot. Starbucks did not sponsor it, nor Barclays Bank, nor Nike. It wasn't led by lobbyists, but drag queens, fags and dykes. The advertisers did not book a rainbow centre spread, and coppers did not dance with queers, but beat them till they bled. So when corporations claim our cause, then comrades, do not buy it. Remind them of our history, that Stonewall was a riot. Now every tactic, loud and quiet, is welcome on our stall. But if it hadn't been for the Stonewall riot, we'd have no pride at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.